Go into presentation of the 2022 Lebanon County budget. The handout includes some pie charts that break and some charts that break down the various categories of funding, both expense and revenue, and the percentage changes in all of those, and toward the back, the descriptions of the groups that fall into those certain categories, and I've added, I think on the back, is also this time a bar graph on the very back, which I'll refer to in a moment. The county budget for 2022 is being presented at a cost of $123,928,727 at a millage rate of 3.8925 mils. Since 2019, I talked about this 2 weeks ago, the county's been facing growing deficit, reaching this year, or in anticipation of next year, a deficit would be $6.5 million. And we've outlined this in years past, but it began with the contracting of prime care medical at the jail back in 2019, and that was a $3 million cost to contract them, which was a substantial increase in the medical costs for the jail. That started us from a balanced budget that was achieved back in 2016 on a path to some deficits, which we've been able to cover with some carry forward cash in the past few years. But we reach a point inevitably where either we're going to need more revenue or cuts are going to be drastically made in order to balance a budget. So hence the recommendation for 2022 to go from 3.2925 mils to 3.8925 mils, which is obviously 0.6 of a mil, or an 18% increase in the county millage. What that would mean for taxpayers, and the best way I could demonstrate that would be the average assessment of a residential property in Lebanon County is $168,950. Under the current millage of 3.2925, that tax would be $556.27. With a millage of 3.8925, that tax would become $657.64, or an increase of $101 on the average residential property. General fund expenses increasing by 6.63% to $54,017,704. I do want to add, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but the budget at $123 million is a steep increase over last year's $86 million. That, however, is almost entirely a one-time anomaly year because of the construction of the DES building, 911 center, that being capital that's included in this budget. But of course, once the construction is complete and those funds are spent and have passed through the budget, then we would go back to what I would consider a more normal number, or a number with not that spike of capital, without that spike of capital. Aside from the proposed increase in millage generating additional tax revenue and the sale of a county-owned land parcel, which we have been working at for a couple of years now, the intersection of 422 or Cumberland and Walnut Street at the East End, that is in next year's budget as revenue. But other than that, sources of revenue are seeing very little growth and even some reductions for 2022. Cash on hand that we have been using for carry forward has diminished over the years in order to bridge those deficits I've spoke of. And so in order to reach a balanced budget this year, we are going to add $372,000 in cash. The millage does not make it all the way to balance, but I'll explain that in a minute. Significant cost increases continue to occur in mostly the areas of public safety, such as the jail, DES, 911, placement of youth in the children and youth, delinquent youth in the children and youth department, And again, I mentioned the contract with Prime Care Medical continues to be a cost that we just at some point have to make up and cover. It has undoubtedly provided a better level of care at the jail, but certainly comes at a cost. DES continues to incur costs for dispatching and personnel, and as you'll hear, radios and upgrades and so on that are part of that operation. So those, I mean, if I had to categorize where the expenses are coming from, it is in large part public safety type expenses, including jail, 911, juvenile placement, just to recap those. Employee expenses, like many employers, the county is facing a labor shortage across most departments, including the 24/7 services at the jail, 911, and the Renova Center. Recruitment and retention of employees is at an all-time low right now. The commissioners are taking some measures to attempt to stem that problem. They've initiated, as those who were here 2 weeks ago, a sign-on incentive at the jail for correctional officers. That's being considered in other places, and also some increases in starting wages that are in the works. Some of those costs are eligible through American Recovery Plan or American Rescue Plan funds, and we'll utilize those when we can for that type of expense. There was a study conducted in 2021 of county salaries to those counties of similar size and proximity, and we will in 2022 and 2023 be making some adjustments to our grade and step scale in order to be competitive. We are having a very difficult time hiring. We are in some cases not getting applicants in some of the positions, and departments are thin and they're strung out, and it's something that needs to be addressed. Employee salary increases for 2022 are as follows: non-union 3% increase, court-related non-professionals and court-appointed professionals, both represented by Teamsters, 3.5%. Social services, also by Teamsters, 3%. County detectives, 3%. Jail correctional officers and corporals are represented by ASME, and we are currently negotiating for the next agreement. And Department of Emergency Services dispatchers are represented by chocolate workers and are receiving 4% and 2% depending on their longevity. The pension plan will again be funded fully, which is basically an expectation at this point. It's been 7 or 8 years that the county's been doing that, meeting the actuarially determined contribution, and for 2022 that is $3.1 million. That has resulted, that along with some strong returns on investments, have resulted in the pension fund being funded at a level of 83%. Health insurance premiums for the county are a pretty big hit this year. They're going up by 9.2%. That alone is a $1.1 million increase in employment costs that the county is bearing. Like many employers, the utilization of the medical services by employees has rebounded from 2020. There was a period of time during COVID shutdown that people were not using medical care or didn't have access in some cases when facilities were not doing elective procedures, and people were just staying away from that. And later on in 2020 that rebounded, and in 2021 and the most recent experience is where our premiums are based, and so therefore that's what the rates are in effect, is a rebound. And in addition to inflation of healthcare costs, which everyone is seeing. Capital projects, I referred to earlier, the $123.9 million budget has a significant portion of it being capital projects, the largest of which is the construction of a new facility for the Department of Emergency Services, including a 911 center, administrative offices, training space, and an operations building to house the county's hazmat team. Also some additional storage for supplies. The entire project is expected to cost $40.9 million. Bids for that building have been awarded, and we will also be doing a new radio dispatch system which will be implemented over the next 2 years. That has a total cost of $19.8 million. So all total, these projects are $60.7 million. However, we are intending to use $18.4 million of the county's portion of the American Rescue Plan Act in different categories of eligibility for this project, which brings the net cost down to $42.3 million. The rest, as you heard, the rest of the funds, those $42 million, are being raised through a general obligation bond. We were able to categorize different aspects of this project, such as portions of the HVAC system, and I want to credit Bob Dowd and Ned Pelger and Joe Connor from our design team. Certain portions of the HVAC system, which are going to have a higher level of filtration, for example. Areas of training, in some cases, are a little larger in order to accommodate distancing if needed, if we're going to be facing this anytime again in the future. And we have additional storage built into the hazmat operations building, which we found early in 2020 didn't really have anywhere to go with PPE when we got it. It was literally just stuffed in the corners and skids and things everywhere. Still is. So those are examples of areas that, under the current regulations of ARPA, we're able to attribute to that need and reimburse for the cost of that type of construction and those types of needs, I guess. In addition, part of that bond is also was mentioned earlier. The county has agreed to purchase the City of Lebanon's portion of this building at a cost of $2.25 million, which is expected to settle sometime in 2022. And there is some money built in there for renovation of that side in order for county offices to move into the city's space. Which leads us to the debt service. As Jay Wenger mentioned earlier, the county's debt service for 2022 will increase by $1.4 million, or 38.6%. That is, clearly that is part of the additional expense in the general fund this year that is leading to the larger deficit. However, and this is where I'll go back to the part where we're adding some cash this year to balance the budget, but anticipating that debt service going down. Again, Jay mentioned that earlier. So the debt service in 2023 will be reduced by $1,021,000 as we retire some of our existing long-term debt in 2023, and then we'll go even lower than that by 2024 and stabilize, I think he said, at $2.8 million in 2024. So that is how we're able to sort of clutch through with not quite, not a larger tax increase, I guess, for 2023. The chart on the back of that packet, I just want to point out, shows where we were in 2015 with the deficit. If you recall, there was a millage increase then for 2016, which kept us balanced for 3 straight years. And in 2019, when the contract with Prime Care was completed, we began to slip into deficit, and since then it has grown. And again, revenue needs to be added or cuts need to be made. And so with that, I'll entertain questions, but it's my recommendation that we go to 3.8925 mils in order to bring this balance, or budget to balance.
Okay. Do you want to get a motion on the floor?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to, this is a preliminary adoption of the budget.
Yes, this is, so today's action would be to put this budget on display at an established millage for the public for the next 20 days at least, and then come back, plan is to come back on December 23rd and consider final adoption.
So I'll make a motion to put the budget on display with the all the information that has been presented.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions?
I think Laura, maybe she's scratching her head.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
no, this time I wasn't. A couple of things, Jamie. How does the negotiation with AFSCME for the jail COs and corporals, how would that potentially impact the budget?
It could impact it depending on an agreement or an arbitration. But what I have done in anticipation is, I have some sense of where we are currently, and it's hopefully going to wind up by the end of the year. So I know where the negotiations are, so we've budgeted at least that. So it potentially could go up slightly, but it shouldn't be a large dollar amount if it goes up anymore from where we sit with them right now.
And then also, you said, obviously it's understandable, the budget at 123 million is a steep increase. So this is like an outlier year?
Yes.
Okay, so then in the budget for 2023 is gonna come back down to more normal numbers?
Yeah, 90 million, maybe somewhere in there, yeah.
What does that do to the millage? So the millage will?
Yeah, the millage is exclusively for the general fund.
Okay,
So these capital projects, go up and down, but doesn't impact millage unless we're raising millage to fund them.
okay,
So, no, that won't change the millage.
okay.
In other words, the debt service is what really helped change the millage, but the cost of the building itself, which is included in the budget, but.
The debt
doesn't-
service is in there, but only as 1 year's payment on it.
But even when the debt service goes down,
Well, then, yes, I think I understand now. So right now, we're putting 372,000 in to balance. And if you're saying then what happens when the millage drops in 23 and 24, theoretically.
the debt service.
Yes, the debt service, thank you. Drops in 23 and 24, we theoretically go into a surplus position. But inevitably, everything else is still going to go up. We'll still have health insurance increases. We'll still have increases in costs of jail and salary and everything. So it's going to go down, but the rest of the county budget's probably going to bring it back somewhat. But I still intend that we'll be we'll balanced for 2023. My anticipation.
What was the percentage increase in 16 when?
32.
32. He would remember
32,
better.
I know that.
He has the mail pieces to prove it.
So by comparison, this is like a bargain.
Exactly.
No, there is no joy in Mudville.
No, but
Yeah,
it's understandable as we've discussed.
thank you.
Would you like to see them?
Any other,
It's easier to
comments?
understand it.
I mean, this has been focused on heavily, the responsibility of county government to provide safety for our citizens, and investment of this type is the way we have to do it. If anyone calls an ambulance, police or fire, they want the best response that is available, and that's what this is intended to provide. So for all our citizens, this is a good investment for the future, and at this point, it's unavoidable. So we are where we are, and I will call the question.
Okay, well, may I just comment?
Oh, sure.
Just briefly.
Yeah.
I thought I summed up my thoughts yesterday at the department head meeting, but I think this is a balance. We're balancing, as Commissioner Phillips said, meeting the public safety demands, taking care of and appreciating our employees, and just providing the public safety services to 140,000 people. This is a real bargain. No one, and especially me, takes any pride or pleasure in raising taxes on folks that work hard to provide a home for their family and have to pay the taxes on their property. But I think the budget well explains it, and people have known that we had to make this change with the emergency services. So I feel very comfortable in voting for this, and doing the best job that we can as responsible county commissioners for the county.
Well, I'd like to address the increase in the medical insurance and use this opportunity to ask everyone to please get a vaccine. It's so important. When people end up in the hospital, it costs a lot of money. Our nurses and doctors are really tired, and we need to do our part and get the vaccine, which will also help us to keep our medical insurance premiums in line. $1 million more is a lot of money for medical insurance. And, you know, our hearts go out to the families that have lost loved ones. And, you know, please, let's all learn from this and keep our budget in check and keep people alive.
Is the health insurance self-funded?
No,
Okay.
we pay claims through the insurance carrier. We have certain caps built in. We have reinsurance that caps our losses at $85,000, for example. We pay an extra premium for that kind of a, you know, loss cap. But now we're through Blue Cross, Capital Blue Cross, paying premiums.
The county jail is always traditionally, you know, the most, well, except for this year, is always typically the most expensive line item in the general fund.
Yes,
Um,
still is.
Still it-
Still is,
still-
always will be,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
because there's no reimbursement for the jail.
And even, I mean, you know, I go to the prison board meetings and they talk about the population is the lowest that it's been since like the early 1990s or the 1980s or something. That doesn't, is it like the physical plant that it just is what it is?
Yeah, I mean, you're still dealing with the same size building, the same staff size, you know, there's a point, and I don't know sitting here what that point is, there's a point at which when the population goes down, you would theoretically need less staff, and that's the most expensive portion of the
Except
budget.
we have
obviously.
less staff now.
Except that exactly, we have less staff right now. We have staff overtime, which is huge, in order to cover the facility and maintain ratios of COs to inmates. So, you know, if we were at, say, a full complement of officers, it could be time to ask the question, you know, when you go from 400 to 275, well, at what point do you start to reduce? I mean, there's, you know, the meal budget goes down, you know, some of the consumables go down, but not by a lot. Our meals are fairly inexpensive, so really it's the staffing. But again, we don't have a lot of staff right now, and so we are ending up paying the overtime, and there's no savings in that.
And then what would be the next most costliest? Is that the juvenile placements?
Yeah, it would be county support to agencies, and that is, yeah, juvenile placements is, I can get you a number, but yeah, that's, you know, that's a couple $1 million.
Children and youth is $11,400,000.
That's their
That's
overall
overall.
agency budget. The county's portion is significant. I might mention here, by the way, the Domestic Relations Office, I didn't mention that in my summary, but it's worth it. They've been very cooperative to help in this budget, and there's some incentive money that has been setting in an account for uses for the operation, and it's been earned by meeting certain marks over the years, and then the state reimburses it. They have incentives for that, for meeting certain percentages, and we've received that on occasion, but we've not used the funding because for every dollar we spend in domestic relations, we get 66 cents back. I'm sorry, 30 cents back. Not it's a 2/3, 1/3 for us. And when you spend the incentive money, however, there is no reimbursement because it was essentially windfall money. We are using $500,000 of that this year to offset the cost of the domestic relations department, so that has helped us to get through here. But yeah, county support to other agencies, mental health, children and youth, DES was county support. missing here, sorry,
It's on-
aging.
on this
It's in the chart,
chart.
yeah.
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 I can get you numbers specific to that. Yeah, we don't have I don't think we have the county support delineated in here, but I have it in my budget.
Can you speak a little bit to the staffing, both part-time and also full-time, and we talked about this a little last time, the total number of employees and how many you're actually down across the county?
In round numbers, we have about 700 positions. We're down, I think, a little over 100 right now.
That's full and part-time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the jail, the correctional officers, the biggest number that you're missing, or
I
is
think
it?
as a percentage, they have the most vacancy. As a percentage, most departments have vacancies and are having a difficult time getting applications and filling positions right now. But I think the jail has the highest percentage, as do other jails. Lancaster County is facing the same issue, and I'm sure others are. That's the one I'm familiar with. And, they did a hiring incentive first, as far as I know, but I don't know if you cover any of the Lancaster news, but they acknowledged a few weeks ago that it hasn't really improved things too much for them. There's something else going on out there where people are just not applying for jobs, so everyone's trying to, take from others for the workforce that exists.
Another piece that we didn't mention, but it does have a bearing on this, is that inflation is at a 30-year high in terms of pressures on costs and so on. And I know when Laura said something about the bargain compared to the last, we obviously wish that this would be a smaller number, but it does break down to about $8.40 a month additional money for that household of $168,000, the assessed value of that house. So that's the new money that the family budgets are going to have to come up with at that level. So, but that's when you're cut across the county, that gets us there, and we feel that's the minimum we can work with. Anything else? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, so moved.
All right, we'll be back with that on December 23rd. If there are any changes that arise until then, certainly let you know along the way. If there are, they're very minor, typically, adjustments. For example, if the correctional officer's agreement settles, then we would make that change before the 23rd, so that you would know. I think we covered everything else. Before we completely leave the room, our bond counsel has some documents for, I think, is it just Commissioner Phillips to sign?
Yes.
Okay, and again, the action was taken in your parameters ordinance already, but some things to finish up paperwork-wise.
I just in closing would like to thank my colleagues and Jamie, you and the department heads and all our employees for pulling together on this budget and getting us through this difficult pass. Thank you.
I'd just like to say, I'd like to thank specifically Commissioner Litz for supporting this thing. I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.